Hello, hi, is everything working? Is it recording? I definitely have my Rocksmith cable unplugged, so is it recording this time? Ah! Hello, I am John Wolf, otherwise known as Super Dude or Super. Call me whatever you like, as long as it is one of those three things. There's a genre of video game I would like to talk about today. It is one of my favorites, so yeah. Y'all ever played an Immersive Sim? Immersive Sims are a video game genre that emphasizes player choice. That's what the Wikipedia page says at least, but what does that mean? All games have choices. Choose who to save, choose between your red, blue, and green ending color, choose your favorite gun. In an interactive medium, we can call almost anything a choice if we're being pedantic enough. What exactly is Immersive Sims championing when it emphasizes choice? When I, personally, think of player choice, I think of the Telltale games and the Bioware RPGs. Games that were very aggressive at advertising that your choices matter and will have effect on the story. Those are story choices, predominantly. Your version of Shepard may be a soldier, infiltrator, vanguard, or some other thing that I've never tried, but they're fundamentally playing the game very similarly. Grab waist-high cover, shoot people. Use powers from a tree of powers depending on your homies and classes. Advance to the next area. If you pick a rather simple character option or a complex one, it's still a game about killing dudes with a gun. Vanguard is a wildly different beast in this regard, and I would accept people claiming it's an exception to that rule. Rather than story decisions being the central pillar of interactive design, it is instead gameplay decisions that are the focus. How you approach a level, an enemy, or a blockage can be different from player to player, and all depends on your skill investments and your lateral thinking. Take this building from Dishonored 2. You need to get in, the guards are invested in keeping you out, to say nothing of the security gate that will melt you if you touch it. So, how do you approach? Well, you could teleport to the top of the building and descend in through an open skylight. You could become a rat and sneak in through the ducts. You could possess a guard and just walk straight through that gate, avoiding the problem entirely. You could eschew supernatural methods and rewire the gate to allow you through, and the guards, not so much. Or simply disconnect the power and walk in. Or try the back door. You didn't think of that, did you? Have you tried the back door? Why do you have to make everything so complicated? Just try them. Immersive Sims pride themselves on making multiple systems that each work within the game world on their own, independent of the player's meddling. Systems that crash into one another, or cause emergent moments where two things clashed in a way that developers weren't intending, and that's before the player gets into the mix. With a creative person behind the wheel, these systems could be pushed to devise new, unintended solutions to problems that the developers never saw coming. That is why these are called Immersive Sims. They are simulations of various systems running independent of the player, and you can walk around inside of this gameplay and mechanics sandbox and press buttons to see what happens. Immersive Sims as a genre have bloomed, died, and come back again over the course of my life, and there are a lot of good ones from the before and after times. The original Deus Ex is fantastic and serves as a great forerunner of the genre. The most recent Hitman games are great fun and take an immersive sim in a different direction than its typical RPG route. Alien Isolation is an immersive sim turned horror where the alien adapts to the mechanics you like to use the most, forcing you to adapt your playstyle and adopt new strategies as the game progresses. BioShock is one of the more restricted forms of the immersive sim, mostly using the design to give you completely different and distinct avenues to approach combat from. And Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is the Zelda formula, with elemental, weather, and power systems that lead to some pretty silly properties in the hands of the clever. Every single one of these games is great, and you should try out all of them if you can, but what I want to talk about is the current-day torchbearer of the immersive sims genre, Arcane Studios. This French studio is comprised of so many freaks for the genre that almost their entire catalog is comprised of immersive sims. You got the aforementioned Dishonored series, a stealth action romp where you're an assassin in a steampunk world taking revenge on those who've wronged you. Or not. Again, they're decision games. You kill them if you want, you don't if you don't, I don't care. You have Arx Fatalis, a game where you play a magician in a world where the sun has died, forcing all sorts of creatures below ground to survive. I have never played it, so I'm just gonna rush past. And Deathloop, a time loop game where the goal is to kill all of the big bads in this island paradise within a single day, lest you fail, and the loop repeat. This is baby's first loop game, and the tutorial is very long to help teach you the looping concept, but if you've never played a looping game, there's some pretty fantastic ones out there, and this one is no exception, so you should totally give it a try. And finally, the thing I actually want to talk about in this video, Prey. Prey is a bit of a complicated story to tell in terms of its development and success, or lack of it. Prey centers Morgan Yu, sibling to Alex Yu on their first day at work. They come into work, perform some tests, which you seem to be failing, and then perform a psych evaluation before things take a turn for the worse. You wake up, seemingly in the same day as before, but no one's around, and the music feels off. The game is trying to tell you that something is amiss when, finally, you see it. The corpse of the woman you met yesterday. Taking a wrench to the window reveals that you aren't in a penthouse suite, but a laboratory, and your existence here has been a lie. You discover these alien entities called the Typhon, which both kill people and seemingly are the remnants of some of the crew. After clearing the tutorial zone, it is up to you to learn what has happened to you, where you are, what these Typhon creatures are, and how to survive and potentially escape with your life. There are a couple of characters who push you in different directions when it comes to the Typhon, but after visiting most of the station, the world is your oyster, and it's up to you to decide who you trust and where you go. Since this is an immersive sim, let's discuss some of the systems and how they interact. The Typhon system. The Typhon are a beautiful ecosystem of creatures that are both completely alien and hostile to humans. There are various machines about the station that test for Typhon material, and if you have too much of it on you, it'll consider you Typhon as well and deal with you like one. Physics! The game has a physics engine, so that items are more or less realistically simulated. Items can be thrown, climbed on, and squeezed through. Notably, the buttons and screens present throughout the game can be pressed with things other than your fingies and toes, so get clever with switches you can't reach. The glue gun! The glue gun is your go-to for lateral thinking when it comes to traversal. When I first played the game, if I encountered a locked door, I went, bet there's a passcode nearby, and went exploring. Now, if I see a locked door, I go, sure, nerd, and fire a gross sticky line of glue gobs on the wall so I can climb past that stairwell. Dork. Idiot. There's also an elemental system, a crafting system, more on that later, and various skills to customize what systems you would like to invest in more closely. Speaking of, let's look into those skills. Prey has 3 trees, later 6 for you to invest points in. Each of these trees constitutes a different type of Morgan U and what profession they held. Scientist leans into medicine and hacking, allowing for more efficient item use and retrieval, as well as hacking. Hacking. A staple of immersive sims for 2 decades. Engineer makes your character physically stronger, allowing you to pick up heavy objects and have more inventory space, as well as being able to fix various machines found about the station. And finally, security, which is all about combat proficiency. Health and stamina increases, faster movement, better damage with guns, a bullet time power-up, and better sneak and sneak attacks. Finally, the last 3 trees are powers concerning the Typhon, which your character can make their own after some investment. This is one of the interesting details about Prey. Anything an enemy can do, you can do a version of it yourself. No exceptions. Mimic turns into cups to escape, so can you. Phantoms teleport to you to close distance, you as well, but usually to escape because you're way squishier than them. Mind control, duh! With so many options, you can come at the entire game from wildly different angles, forcing thousands of different combinations for playthroughs. And while I say that like it's a good thing, it does have its drawbacks. There are too many powers for any one person to keep straight in a run, which can be overwhelming to the player. Your safest bet is to pick only certain trees and run down those trees exclusively to not overwhelm yourself. Prey is better when you specialize. These skills are gained through neuromods, an injectable that alters the structure of your brain, allowing you to do previously impossible actions. Imagine a neuromod created from a master pianist, giving you their virtuosic ability instantly. One injection through the eyeball later, and boom. These neuromods are essentially your experience points through the game, but they are also physical objects in the game world. You want to level up? You have to go find the level up material. That means growing stronger is tied to your willingness to explore the space, rewarding you for being thorough or thinking up clever solutions to problems. Speaking of exploration, Prey's world was an interesting experiment by Arcane in an attempt to solve a problem they were facing in their previous titles. You see, most people play a game once, if they beat it at all. If you put painstaking effort into designing a level, with multiple routes and solutions both intended and unintended by the developer, that speaks to replayability. They want you to try the same area multiple times, find new solutions and gameplay styles, but again, that pesky player problem. So Prey said, what if we made it open world? The entire station of Talos 1 is traversable, and is meant to make sense if you viewed it from the outside world. Look, you could see it from the outside view. See, they're bragging about it. They're bragging. They know you'll be asked to revisit areas as you play, to see them change and develop new obstacles. This is how Prey tries to solve that replayability problem. Make it so one playthrough uses the same content repeatedly. That may sound like it gets boring, and it does eventually, but this makes you view areas in new contexts as you travel through the game. Searching for neuromods, looking for lost crew, going into areas again with new equipment, completing new quests that cause the area to change and you view it from a new perspective. You really drink deep of the design the developers put into their levels, and in that way, I would say Arcane succeeded in their mission. Now, to tell you what makes Prey so special, I need to tell you about the Recycler. This dandy machine will take anything in your inventory that you're not a fan of and break it down into its individual crafting materials, whether they be organic, mineral, synthetic, or exotic, meaning Typhon material. These crafting components are then paired with the Fabricator, which takes blocks of these components and 3D prints the item of your choosing. You can only print what you have recipes for, so just like with the neuromods, it pays to explore and be thorough in your exploration. This allows you to make anything in the game: weapons, ammo, grenades, and eventually, neuromods. And this is where Prey goes bananas. After completing a quest to get access to the neuromod schematics, you can produce as many level up materials as you can muster for the rest of the game. You're probably halfway through the game at this point, and it just gave you the keys to the city. Invest in what you want, run free, show them what you can do! Right, so I should probably tell you how combat works. If you're expecting some Doom-style combat, then you're in the wrong place. Every enemy type, save one or two, is much stronger than you in an outright engagement, so you have to play it smart. Enemies have a litany of counters depending on the type of Typhon you're fighting. When they're countered, they're stunned, and the next few hits deal extra damage, and the enemy has no ability to retaliate. Combat is about bringing the right tool for the job to hopefully solve the puzzle and deal with the enemy with minor resources spent on your part. As more enemies of varying strength and type are added to any one engagement, this puzzle becomes harder, and your neat counters become messier to execute. And that is how the difficulty ramps up. But remember, they just broke their leveling economy. You have so many neuromods. It's time to tear the Typhons a new one. From this point forward, the game is mostly just you having a grand old time exploring the station, kicking ass, and taking names. There are some new enemies that appear as you approach endgame, and depending on your build, they may or may not be a big problem, but your power level makes even a very big problem surmountable compared to your woefully unequipped early game character, until the game changes completely. I know that when it comes to mechanics, I've not really been hiding anything from you guys, but from this point forward, I'm going to be getting to story spoilers, so if you don't want that, please skip to the time code or go to the portion in the video, scrub through. I have chapters in this thing. I'm going to be spoiling any of the secret stuff that you don't have an understanding of when the game begins and the ending. So, yeah, skip it if you don't want to. You have been warned. Morgan was forced to live their first day over and over due to a quirk in removing neuromods. When the information is deleted from the brain, so are the memories you've made since that neuromod was first put in. Someone thought it was a good idea to put Morgan through the same day over and over, putting in new neuromods, testing them, and removing them to start the day anew tomorrow. And that someone was Morgan, but that's not the whole story. Alex would debrief Morgan on the day after the neuromods were removed to catch them up to speed, but as Morgan went through the tests, something about them changed. Their personality drifted away from the original Morgan, and this terrified Alex. Someone installed the psyche eval to watch and study this personality shift, and Alex stopped bringing Morgan up to speed between tests. Morgan was left isolated, and Alex, along with Morgan's former colleagues, left them in this elaborate cage. The neuromods are technology based on the Typhon lifeform, meaning that people are injecting Typhon-based material directly into their brains. Perhaps this is the cause of Morgan's personality shift, but that's just a theory. A game theory. Anyway, now the Typhon are running amok on the ship, killing people and producing some strange fibrous material that the researchers have dubbed coral. No one knows what this coral is for outside of theories, but certain people believe that it must be stopped. January, a robot made by Morgan during one of their escape attempts, urges Morgan to destroy the Typhon, the station, and all the people on it. If even one Typhon makes it to Earth, this would occur there, and since most people aboard have Typhon material in their brains, no one can be spared. But January represents a different Morgan who escaped before being locked back into their testing cage. There are others with different ideas on what should be done with Talos 1. And since this is yet another different Morgan, it's up to you to decide who is right and who you should listen to. Throughout the game, you've been trying to get to Alex and get answers for what's been done here, and when you finally reach him, the Typhon's final assault begins. A Typhon almost as large as the station itself attacks and begins destroying Talos 1. It deals massive damage all over the ship, closes off some areas entirely, and forces your hand in the final hours to choose what to do with Talos 1. Destroy it, escape, or preserve the station whilst clearing the Typhon threat, preserving the knowledge gained here. No matter what you choose, the ending is the same. Turns out that Talos 1, as a whole, was another simulation, this time created by Alex to test your morality and decision-making. You are on Earth, which has gone through the nightmare scenario January described. The world is completely corrupted with Typhon. You are not Morgan, but a Typhon injected with human DNA, who is reliving a simulation of the events of Talos 1. You can find one of the past Morgans thinking about this concept in their notes aboard the station, and along with various disassociative moments or choosing the wrong ending, you can kind of see this coming if you were really thorough with exploring and a good guesser. Morgan presumably died in the real Talos 1 incident, and they weren't as successful as you were in quelling the Typhon threat. After being judged by Alex and the various machines that represent key characters and decisions made throughout the game, you are presented with a decision: to help or kill the humans. And that's the end of the game. This ending is a very divisive one. Some hate it, some love it. Personally, I think this is very boring and not an exciting way to end the game. I just kind of went through a climactic scene where the entire station is being destroyed for the past hour, and I'm trying to figure out and scramble to fix the thing, and then you tell me that none of it was real. You know, that it was all a dream. It's a little anticlimactic. So yeah. In terms of story, Prey starts strong and kind of peters out. I know that, but I recommend the game to you anyway, because the road is better than the destination. It's a super fun experience, and if you find yourself with money to spare, there are worse games to play than a really fantastic diamond with some rough edges. Besides, most of the rough parts of Prey are only in the back half of the game, after it breaks its own difficulty curve. Surely you can play 10 hours of really great game, followed by 6 hours of just a good game, right? I mean, it's like Dishonored, but in space. People love sci-fi. Of course this game is wildly regarded as one of the best that Arcane made, right? Right? Okay, so there's this other game I gotta talk about, totally unrelated. We'll get back to Prey in a moment. So there's this game that came out in 2006, created by Human Head Studios, about a family of Cherokee that were abducted by an alien spaceship called the Sphere. It is a first-person shooter where you gain a slew of alien weapons, play with portals and gravity mechanics, and try to save your family and escape with your lives. The game sold pretty well, and even had enough enthusiasm around it that they had a sequel plan that it was ultimately shut down when the IP changed hands. This game is called Prey. It is a different kind of game entirely from the one we've been talking about for 17 minutes. It's a different kind of game entirely. When Arcane started working on this open-world sci-fi immersive sim, they were told by Bethesda that if they were making a sci-fi, it had to use this IP.
None of these ideas were somehow something that Bethesda wanted, but they wanted us to work on the Prey IP, which so that's how everything started. And eventually we agreed on something like, as long as I can do almost like a different IP, but with the same, the fact that it's on a space station with aliens, etc. I guess that was the compromise, because anything else was not negotiable. That game had to be Prey somehow.
Shout out to NoClip, who are the people who actually conducted this interview. They are a community-funded YouTube channel that goes around to various studios and documents the game-making process. They've been to multiple different countries and many studios covering a litany of games, so I recommend you look through their catalog and see if there's anything that you find interesting. They have many documentaries about Arcane Studios, because I have a suspicion they love them almost as much, if not more than I do, so please, give them a watch. I can't recommend them highly enough. So, no matter what, Prey is what this had to be, despite containing nothing of the original Prey setting or ideas. If you're a fan of the original Prey, this is a massive middle finger to your enthusiasm for that original game. And if you're a new person, looking up information for this new one just became very confusing, because there's another game out there with the exact same name. This confusion likely led to Prey's poor performance, and it is considered a failure by the studio. So, despite Prey being an exceptional game if rough around the edges, studio meddling made the marketing confused and likely hurt the game's sales irreparably. This didn't stop the studio from continuing to work on the game, though. A couple of DLC were released for Prey in the subsequent years. The first was a prop hunt ripoff using the Mimic's mechanics. I have never tried it. The other is Prey Mooncrash. Mooncrash may not be for everyone, but it's a terrific mutation of the original Prey's mechanics into a new format. Here were the complaints I had for Prey. Too many powers. Overuse of areas in the game. Story ends like a butt. Mooncrash sets out to solve all of these things by turning Prey into a roguelite. Roguelikes, and their sister roguelites, are games like Rogue. Did that clear that up for you? No? Okay, well, at the risk of being verbose, roguelikes are games where you have to complete the entire game in one playthrough, arcade style. If you don't, it resets to the beginning, with nothing from previous playthroughs. Think of it as your save file erasing every time you die. Sounds brutal, and roguelikes tend to be. But another thing roguelikes do is change the format every time you start a new game. Elements are lightly randomized between runs, so you always have a different experience. New enemy placements, new room formats, or perhaps different areas entirely. New upgrades that change your build so that no one game is the same as any other. I will likely have a video talking about this genre all its own, so I'm not going to go into further detail than I already have. Mooncrash is a simulation of a different, terrible event involving the Typhon that happened on the moon, from 5 different perspectives. To beat Mooncrash, you must successfully escape the moon as each character. And that's it. Sounds pretty easy. Except, of course, for the corruption mechanic, where the simulation starts to break down the more time you spend mucking about. The simulation becomes more and more random as you gain corruption, and the entire areas break down around you. You want to clear levels as early characters as fast as you can so you can deal with less randomness on latter playthroughs. The areas become more random as the corruption spreads, making new runs more fresh as the time continues. Each character has a relatively small suite of powers available to them, making their gameplay styles distinct from one another. This has 2 effects. For one, no one is a jack of all trades. This means there's a chance that you come across an enemy type that you have no counters for, and thus must think on your toes for how you defeat them, to say nothing of how the corruption will affect things further. And 2, having a smaller skill pool is less overhead for the player to think about, and serves to make each character easier to pick up and play. Finally, the story. I'm not in the spoiler section, so I'm not going to get too much into it, but this story is much less structured due to the roguelike style, and instead serves to show Prey's events from a different perspective. Mooncrash is an interesting reconstruction of Prey into an entirely different game, and I think it's largely successful at what it tries to do. If you enjoyed Prey, you should give Mooncrash a shot. No guarantees that you'll like it though, it is a much different experience. So even though the game didn't sell well at all upon release, Prey is a really great game that is absolutely worth your time. I think this is the premier immersive sim to try if you want a more pure expression of the genre's strengths, but I'm a bit too young to have really tried many of them, so if you think there's a better example, let me know in the comments. Regardless, this game is what the kids would call a cult hit, and I think it deserves greater recognition for what it does right. I hope you try it and love it just as much as I do. Conclusions. You know there's a 2x speed option, right? If you really want me to do this, you could just watch the video again, but this time do it fast. Alright, fine, but only because you asked nicely. Immersive Sims are games that give a player exceptional mechanical flexibility when it comes to how they want to play the game. There are a bunch of really great ones, but I'm only really going to talk about Prey. It is an open-world immersive sim where you run around trying to deal with the Typhon monsters and learn how to deal with them, and potentially save the station. It features deep exploration, puzzly combat, and a great emphasis on lateral thinking that makes the experience of playing feel like solving a puzzle box the size of a space station. It also features a DLC, which turns the game into a roguelite if that's your bag. It didn't sell well due to studio meddling, but it's still a great game and I think you should try it. I am Superdude, thanks for watching. Hello, thank you for watching the video. I'm a massive fan of Prey, love that game so much, and yet it didn't sell well, did it? Which I already told you about. So I think that everyone should try it, and that's why I made this video. So please give it a try if you can, especially since it's pretty cheap given that it was a commercial failure. Love it, and I'm probably, after having made this video and thinking about it for a couple of weeks, I now want to play it. So you'll be able to find me on Twitch. I believe it's Superdude 100,000. Those are numbers, not spelled 100,000. Playing this game, probably to completion, because I love it. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you when I do.